What up, everybody? D-Man back. So exactly 1 year ago, on June 23rd, 2015, I sat down and recorded a 30-minute video titled 15 Things That Need to Happen in Legendary's Godzilla Sequels. Now, although I do still agree with all of the points that I made, we have more news about the Legendary movies. We know that there will be a King Kong vs. Godzilla. We know there's going to be Skull Island. So we know multiple things about it now. We know Gareth Edwards left. So I decided, why not? 1 year later from the day that I decided to return to YouTube, and that was really the video that made me think that I really want to do YouTube. I want to be on YouTube from that point on. So I decided, why not 1 year later just sit down and make 15 things that need to happen in Legendary's Godzilla Sequels Part 2. So right away, this is not even 15 things, this is 16 things, because we're going to start out with a little bonus. It's kind of a good idea, maybe it won't work, but I think it would be a great way to start Godzilla 2, seeing Godzilla killing some more Mutos. Some more of the exact same creatures. I think that would be an awesome way to start the movie. It would be almost like, what was it, Gamera 3, that starts out where Gamera's killing the Gauss in the middle of the city, and that's our big intro to the movie. I think that would be a great way to throw us right into the action, get a good look at Godzilla. Here's what I was thinking for the scene. In the daytime, we would get a shot of like Godzilla maybe in the desert, that way buildings aren't getting destroyed, fighting off a male Muto and then killing it. And as he's killing it, a smaller female Muto, not as big as the one from Godzilla 2, comes up and he grabs it, throws it down, and then does something to kill it. This would not only establish Godzilla right off the bat as super powerful, probably stronger than he was in the last movie, but it would be a cool way to start the scene, a good action sequence. And no, maybe they won't do it, and I'm not going to be upset if they don't, but I just think that would be a cool thing to see. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Alright, so my number one thing that they need to do. They need to make the wait worth it. That was my number one thing last year, it's my number one thing this year. And the reason I'm having to re-say this one is only because I feel like it's kind of stupid because they pushed Godzilla 2 back only to make room for Gareth Edwards to do Star Wars. Now Gareth Edwards dropped Godzilla 2 and then they pushed it back another year. So now that we have 5-year gap in between, that then we definitely need the wait to be worth it. We need a great movie to come out at the end of, what is it, 2019 or whenever it comes out. So at the end of this wait, it needs to be really good. And here are some ideas on how they could do that. Number two, keeping it realistic. Gareth Edwards set up a very realistic universe, and although I do think that the kaiju that they pick, specifically Mothra and King Ghidorah, don't necessarily work in a realistic way, I do think that it will be a huge switch in tone if they go all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just crazy balls to the wall, kaiju action, which is just very similar to the Showa movies, and I don't think that would work. I think they gotta keep a somewhat consistent tone. It doesn't have to be as realistic. They could do some. They could be setting up for a less realistic Godzilla universe for King Kong vs. Godzilla. But I think it has to be a gradual way to get there. I don't think that just all of a sudden we just have a major switch from kind of the ultra realistic take from 2014, and then all of a sudden we just get this crazy thing in this movie. I think it needs to be a somewhat realistic tone in order to fit into the same universe. Number 3, show the public reaction. I was on my old list too. We did not get enough of that in Godzilla. We did not get enough of people looking at the monsters and reacting to the monsters. That is something that 1985 does really well. We get the crazy dude running through the city because one reason or another. Yeah, Godzilla 1985 was pretty much, if they're gonna like work for this movie, I think that's a good template to go to and say, okay, let's take some notes. Let's have some scenes similar to this, not ripping it off, but scenes that are similar because that was a good movie that had good ideas, good scenes, and I think Godzilla 2 could use some of that. We need to see the public reaction. We need to see people afraid. We need to see people turning on the government because the government hid this from them. We need to see a lot of cool stuff. I'm sure the government would be pointing fingers at whose fault it is that the Mutos and Godzilla showed up. All this stuff. Now, we need to have a scene of Godzilla destroying things. He can't just be the good guy. I mean, yeah, it looks to me like we're going to get Hero Godzilla. That's what it looks like in this series. But I don't want that. I want something more along the lines of Heisei, where you find out in the Heisei series that Godzilla would have eventually become the defender of Japan, and he starts out destroying things. I want something similar to that. That, by the way, that was before he was erased from history. I want something similar to that. I want Godzilla destroying things, because then we'd get, yeah, he's a hero. He will defend the world from just whatever kaiju, more of as a territorial thing, not as a oh I love you people thing. But I do think Godzilla should go around. Maybe we get one scene where he's destroying a city. Or, going back to this point that I made last year, maybe he's in search of nuclear energy. Maybe the energy at the bottom of the ocean's core isn't satisfying him anymore, and he has to come up on land and destroy some power plants to get his energy back. Just like in 1985, just like in Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, it's already set up. It would make sense in the Godzilla universe for Godzilla, this specific Godzilla universe especially, for Godzilla to need nuclear energy. So it would make perfect sense for him to come on land destroying things in order to get to that nuclear energy. Establish Godzilla's powers. That's number 5. Godzilla is very weird in this universe because he didn't get a lot of screen time and we don't know a lot about him. We know he's very strong. We don't know how strong. We know his atomic breath is like a plasma. We don't know how strong it is. We know at times it can burn the head off of a Muto. We know at times that it can just knock one down. So I think they need to establish that power set. I think we need to know how much he can take, because clearly in G14, he gets beaten by the Mutos. I've said this many times. Godzilla would have lost that fight. The only reason he won was because Ford blew up the nest and distracted the Mutos. He also, Godzilla, almost lost because a building fell on top of him. We need to know how strong he is. Alright, now I'm getting into some specifics in terms of kaiju. I think we need to have Rodan be as big as Godzilla. There's good reason for this. I think it would make perfect sense for Rodan to come from this nuclear radiation world. And I think it would be pretty much fair to say that Godzilla and Rodan would be alpha predators. Different alpha predators. They would be in competition constantly. So it would make perfect sense for Rodan to be just as big as Godzilla, if not a little bit smaller. Not more than 50 feet smaller. So maybe Rodan's 300 feet just like the female Muto. So then he's flying around. I think it would be great because if he flies around, his wings would essentially do what they did in Final Wars and just obliterate everything. But not because he's moving so fast, just because of how big he is. So anyways, I think it would be cool if he was as big as Godzilla or just a tad bit smaller. Also, I don't want Rodan to have a beam attack. I don't want Fire Rodan. I just want a Rodan that is just like the classic. I want it to look along the lines of the original Rodan movie, not along the lines of the Showa series Rodan, because he sucked. Fire Rodan was okay. I didn't like him. What was the other Rodan from Final Wars? Yeah, he was okay. I don't want him to look like that either. I'm saying more along the lines of classic. Now, Mothra needs to be much smaller than Godzilla. Now, I want the larva to remain the same. I want the larva to look just like they usually do. They don't need to change anything. Maybe they give him blue eyes, just like that picture that's always out there of Godzilla, King Ghidorah, and Mothra fight, Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Rodan, and Mothra fighting. Maybe Mothra has blue eyes. I don't know. I just think that Mothra should be smaller than Godzilla. I think the larva should look the same as they usually do. The Mothra design as a whole could probably go along the lines of Tokyo SOS, something that looks similar to that in the fur and just that way. Because I thought Tokyo SOS was when Mothra looked best. So I want it to be similar to that, but she needs to be smaller than Godzilla. Maybe she's the size of the male Muto. That would be a good size for Mothra. Now, on to King Ghidorah. This is going to be a big one. Also, I don't want him to be called King Ghidorah. I want him to be called Ghidra. Or Ghidorah. They're probably not going to say Ghidra in America. So I want him to be called Ghidorah. I want him to be much bigger than Godzilla. Like, maybe the size of Shin Godzilla. Like, 450 feet or something. I want him to be much bigger than Godzilla. And I want him to take down Godzilla. I think that would be great. I think King Ghidorah and Godzilla. King Ghidorah, I want the lightning breath, or the lightning whatever he shoots. I want the fur around the neck. I don't know if they're going to do that. They haven't done that since the Showa series. I want him to look like the Showa series, but more intimidating, more realistic, modern. Also, I said this last time, I'll add this one back, or I'll just mention it again, just because we're talking about Ghidorah. I want his origins to be left open. I don't want a definitive Ghidorah came from here. That way, in my head, I could still say, okay, he's an outer space dragon that goes around destroying planets. Because that's what I liked in Ghidorah. I hated Heisei series when they made him an Earth monster that was just mutated from Dorads. I hated that. So, next. Have King Kong and Godzilla in their own movie. Don't throw in Ghidorah at the end. Don't throw in anyone else at the end for them to have to team up and fight. That is so cliche. We got it in Batman v Superman. God, that's just so dumb. It's King Kong vs. Godzilla, or actually this one's called Godzilla vs. King Kong. We don't need them to stop fighting to team up. We want to go for what the title promises. Take a look back at the original King Kong vs. Godzilla. Say what you will about it. I love that movie. But one thing that no one's going to deny that that movie did well was it just had King Kong and Godzilla fight each other. We didn't have a third monster show up at the end to make them team up. No one is upset about that. Don't add a third monster for them to team up about. Here's what I think should happen. Godzilla 2. And I might say this later. Yeah, this is my next one. This is number 10. Godzilla 2. Godzilla fights Rodan and Mothra. Then, King Kong vs. Godzilla. After that, Godzilla 3. Make a Godzilla 3. That's my number 10. So, here's what I want in Godzilla 3. I just want Godzilla to go up against Ghidorah at the beginning of the movie, or within like the first hour, get beaten, retreat. Ghidorah just destroys everything. Like he's flying around the world, just blowing up cities. Then Godzilla at the end of the movie comes back with help of Rodan and Mothra, and they tag team Ghidorah, just like in Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster. That would be an amazing movie. That would be a great way. So see, here's another thing. That is another bonus. Don't kill off the monsters. Never kill off the kaiju. You have reasons to not, because then you can use them again. So if that Godzilla 3 happened, I would love that. Alright, number 11. Have Kong about the size of Godzilla or smaller. I know there's some stupid news article that is claiming that King Kong in Skull Island is going to be 100 feet. Don't believe it. If you read the same thing I read it on Toku Legion. Don't believe it. That same article also says that Godzilla is 650 feet. Godzilla is 355 feet, not 600 feet. That would just be insane. And I've already said in another video that hasn't been released yet, but in one of the upcoming videos, me and someone else talk about the possibility of Godzilla being a mile long and 1,000 feet tall. I am 100% against this idea. I think Godzilla has pretty much reached his peak. I don't want him bigger than Shin Gojira. I feel like they will make him bigger. 500 feet is the max I want my Godzilla. That is the absolute max. And there has to be good reason for it. Anyways, back onto this. King Kong being about the size of Godzilla, or maybe Kong being up to his chest. Maybe Kong being up to his chest. That way when he runs on fours, he's about up to his waist. I feel like Kong would have the speed advantage that way. I feel like Kong's just going to be stronger and smarter. More of a, like, tactical fighter. Because Godzilla doesn't seem to be a tactical fighter. I think that Godzilla is, like, kind of a child. I think that Godzilla was born. Its parents were killed by the Mutos, or it's one of its parents were killed by the Mutos, or just one of its last remaining species family members. Then that Godzilla has never been in a fight before. I think that 2014 was its first fights. I think it's very untrained, very not knowing about the world. All it's done is gotten nuked and then laid at the bottom of the ocean. That's all that Godzilla's done. Sorry if my voice sounds weird, also I'm fighting off a cold. Alright. So, King Kong needs to be smaller, or about the size. Alright, number 12. Godzilla vs. Kong needs to be about the monsters, not the people. Those are two great monsters, two great characters in and of themselves. They have both gotten movies up to that point, with Skull Island having been released by that point. So, we can sympathize with them. We can characterize with them. We know who they are. We don't need the human story to take over the movie. That was one big problem with a movie like Destroy All Monsters. Great kaiju stuff at the end there, but that movie is so focused on the humans that I think it loses track of what it was trying to do. It was trying to end the franchise. A movie that does this kaiju thing well, multiple movies. The original King Kong, the 2005 King Kong, both focus on Kong as a character most. War of the Gargantuas focused on the Gargantuas as characters most. Godzilla Final Wars focuses on Godzilla as a character most. There are so many movies that do this so well. This one needs to also have Godzilla and Kong be the driving force of the movie, not the people. Alright, number 13. Have Monarch play a huge role in all of the future kaiju movies to come. I'm not talking like Pacific Rim here. I'm talking specifically in this universe. If we get like a spin-off, like a Mothra spin-off, or which I could see that happening. Or the Skull Island movie, Monarch's going to have to play a huge part in that. Monarch's going to have to play a giant part in Godzilla 2, seeing as though they've been exposed to the world. Godzilla 3, if they make it, Monarch will be a big part in that one also. It'll have to be. And also Godzilla vs. Kong. I want Dr. Serizawa's story to continue throughout all of these movies with him being in Monarch. And I know last time I said Ford doesn't need to return. I still stand by that. Ford doesn't need to return. But I would like to see him return. I've changed my opinion on it from last time. But Dr. Serizawa, I feel like his story isn't over. Ford's could be. His story isn't. Alright. Number 14. Don't kill off King Kong or Godzilla in that movie. That completely ruins your sequel opportunity. And I know they wanted to make a trilogy. Alright, so then make a Skull Island trilogy. Make a King Kong trilogy. Make one that takes place after King Kong vs. Godzilla, where Kong goes back to the island or something, or Kong's loose in civilization again. You can do so much with King Kong. And now that we got a new take on King Kong, there's so many stories that could be told. Here you go. Why don't you just retell King Kong Escapes? Now, that was a joke. That would not work in this universe. But see, that's an example of a story where King Kong and Godzilla fought, and then King Kong went to be in his own solo movie, and it worked. Although that Kong was very different than the King Kong vs. Godzilla Kong. He was much smaller, looked different. Anyways, you can have King Kong be in his own movie afterward, and it would still work. Also, you can have Godzilla be in his own movie afterward, and it would still work. I think I made it pretty clear at this point that I want the order to go Godzilla 1, Skull Island, Godzilla 2, King Kong vs. Godzilla, or Godzilla vs. King Kong, and then Godzilla 3, maybe Skull Island 2. I doubt it would be called that. Maybe it would just be called, like, King Kong 2. I don't know. So have Monarch play a huge role in all of the movies that they make. Also, don't kill off King Kong vs. Godzilla. That was the one I left off on. Okay, number 15. I've said this before in this video, and I'll say it again. This is an important point. Don't make King Kong and Godzilla team up. Take a look at Batman v Superman. Now, say what you will about that movie. There's one thing most people won't deny. It was a very crowded movie. There was so much they were trying to do, and although we haven't seen the full movie, they didn't succeed 100%. Only because they tried to do too much for what the movie is. Don't do that in Godzilla 2 or in Godzilla vs. King Kong. Don't do that. Don't have a third monster. Maybe, at the most, there would be, King Kong fighting something on Skull Island at the beginning of the movie. He'll kill it. It'll establish how cool he is for those people who hadn't seen Skull Island yet. That'll be a way for people to go, oh man, this Kong is huge. This Kong is great. He just took down Gorlosaurus. I don't know. And yeah. And then Godzilla will show up and the two will fight. And then the movie will end. Maybe the movie ends just as ambiguous as before. I would certainly hope not. I want one monster to be on the other one when they're down. I want like a scene of King Kong versus the T-Rex where one of the monsters puts their foot on the other one and then just does a roar of victory. That would be so cool. So pretty much that is all I had to say, guys. That was my 15 or 16 or however many things I talked about. Let's just call it 15 things that need to happen in the Legendary's Godzilla 2. If you're interested to see my original list, I'll have a link in the description below, but just so you know, here's my list. Number 1, make the wait worth it. Number 2, keep it realistic. Number 3, continue Dr. Serizawa's story. Number 4, Name the Mutos. Number 5. Show the public reaction. Number 6. Establish Godzilla as a bad guy. Number 7. You can keep Rodan linked to Godzilla. Number 8. Make Mothra's origins mystical. Number 9. Keep Ghidorah's origins secret, but hint at a space monster origin from Showa era, or at least separate his origin from Godzilla and Rodan. Number 10. Keep Mothra and Ghidorah bad, and Rodan the same as Godzilla. Keep Mothra good and Ghidorah bad, and Rodan the same as Godzilla. Number 11. Introduce slowly. Number 12. Build up to each. Number 13. Give Godzilla more screen time. Number 14. Oh, I already said that twice. Number 13. Give Godzilla more screen time. Number 14. Tie in some nuclear allegory. Don't give up on the fact that Godzilla needs radiation to survive. Number 15. Don't kill them off. Here's my current list. Bonus. Start of the movie, Godzilla killing a Muto. Number 1. Keep the wait worth it, or make the wait worth it. Number 2. Keep it realistic. Number 3. Show public reaction. Number 4. Have Godzilla destroying things. That's not the same as having him as the bad guy like I wanted last time. I just want him to be an animal in need of food or something along those lines. Number 5. Establish Godzilla's power set. That's very important. Number 6. Have Rodan as big as Godzilla. Number 7. Have Mothra be smaller than Godzilla. Number 8. Have King Ghidorah be bigger than Godzilla. Number 9. Have King Kong and Godzilla in their own movie. Number 10. Make a Godzilla 3. Number 11. Have Kong about the size of Godzilla or smaller. Number 12. Have Godzilla vs. Kong all about the monsters, not the people. Number 13. Have Monarch play a huge role in future movies. Number 4. Dude, I did this twice. Number 13. Have Monarch play a huge role in future movies. Number 13. Don't kill off King Kong or Godzilla. Number 15. Don't make King Kong and Godzilla team up. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm D-Man. And D-Man out.